Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Krista Gurka, and today I have two guests on who actually are also podcasters. And if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you probably have known them in the industry or possibly have worked with them. So I have Shantae Cofield, aka the Movement Maestro, and Lex Lancaster, who does all things tech for a lot of businesses, both online and brick and mortar. And both are physical therapists, neither of whom I believe is actually working as a physical therapist now.
No way, man.
Nope.
Yeah, no way,
I did that for many years.
So,
I'm done.
I know. I was like, but I didn't know if Lex maybe on occasion was like, yeah, I'll treat someone's back. I knew Shantae was. So let me have you guys, Lex, go ahead and introduce yourself, give a little bit of your background, and then we'll kick it over to Shantae, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I am Lex Lancaster. Thank you so much for having me, by the way, or having us. I work with health and wellness professionals on the tech side of their businesses. So as of right now, I do everything, if you will, online tech side of things, except for Facebook and Google ads. So I work with folks to build websites, SEO, email marketing, all of the things underneath that umbrella. I am a PT by trade, as you said, and I did not practice for tons of years like Shantae did, but I owned a brick and mortar practice from 2020 to 2023 in New Hampshire, and now I live in California. But
those were really exciting times to own any type of business in 2020 to 2023. So
sure was.
Yeah, I hear that. So yeah, so Lex has she also has a few programs, which we'll talk about too, in terms of SEO. And I think one of the benefits to you is because you are a physical therapist, like you understand the language of what we're trying to say. And I think a lot of people feel very comfortable for that reason. And so Shantae, you want to give us a little history on you?
Yeah. So I also am a physical therapist by trade many moons ago. And then I did a lot of education, working namely for Rock Tape. And then concurrently built my own brand online, kind of by accident. There was no I was very fortunate. Right? I wasn't trying to build something, so that made it much easier. I wasn't like, oh, I have to get 1 million followers and do all this stuff. I was just like, I have stuff to say. And now I coach health and fitness pros. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Mine is largely health and fitness pros, and teach them how to build personal brands in the online space. Helping them really, I hate to say the word profit, but also it is important to say the word profit. I help them build profitable online personal businesses, and personal brands. Largely supported by Instagram as the main platform. I know the other ones exist. That is not where my forte is. I have niched down hard, and it's going to be through Instagram, using that personal brand, and then teaching them how to actually build a community, foster community, build trust, foster trust, and then the actual logistics of launching things. Because people tend to think that the online space is just so chaotic and unpredictable, and I'm like, actually, it's not. You just need to know what you're doing and have someone that knows what they're doing and has been doing it.
That's great. And I think that you as well, just having the health and fitness background and a PT background, again, speaking the same language, being able to understand what PTs are talking about. And I would venture to say, I won't put words in your mouth, but I see in health and fitness, especially physical therapy, nobody's really taught how to run a business. I mean,
at all.
No. Pilates certifications don't come with it. PT school certainly doesn't come with it. I mean, some personal trainers, we sit for like a CSCS, and there's definitely no training on that in there. So I think the more, and to be honest, I love more women being in the front of this kind of leading, paving, the way for other women. Cause I just think listen, I've heard you talk about this too. I talk about it a lot. Like the bro marketing is just different. And I just think it doesn't work. It doesn't sit well with everyone. It's not. And if it's not natural to you and it's not like who you are, I think you just can't lean into that.
Not sustainable. No,
right.
No. Yeah. I would say also doesn't work long term, right? One of the things, if you back it up just a second there, like, I don't think anyone's taught how to run a business. Like, yes, maybe if you went and got an MBA, perhaps, but in general, I don't think anyone's actually taught, in my opinion, the correct way to run a business, nor are they taught a sustainable model, right? We're taught this extractive model that's just like, this is not sustainable. This is not, not genuine. And then the bro marketing that comes with it. Yeah. Like maybe you get an initial sale, but then like you lose people on the back end of this thing if you manage to capture them at all. So, I'd go so far as to say that no, definitely PTs were not taught how to do it. And it's kind of like inherently a clash because people that come into PT, they're all like these bleeding heart service people. And they're like, I just want to help you. I just want to help you. And I'm like, you're poor now. You have no money. Like, who are you helping? So like you come in with that, and then you're definitely not taught in school in any kind of way how to run a business. And then if you do get any exposure to it, you're taught, I will say, an incorrect, unsustainable approach to business.
Yeah, outdated as well.
Terrible.
And really
Terrible.
designed for like white
Yes.
men in suits that would work a 9 to 5. So
Yes.
outdated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes.
even have friends that have gone to
Yes.
business school, like good business schools, Harvard, Stanford, Penn. And when they open their business in fitness, they're like, yeah, I have an MBA, but it doesn't really, maybe I know the terms.
Yes.
I know what they're saying, but it doesn't. The best way to learn how to own and operate a business is to own and operate a business.
Right.
Yes.
And also
And
just
just
to
do
do
the
what
work.
feels good for you. Right. Because the other thing too
Right.
that ends up happening is whether we're talking about tech side of things or we're talking about actually running the business and selling a package, if you will, people will latch on to what everyone else is saying and doing instead of doing, and they'll be like, I don't like the way this feels, but then they'll keep doing it just because that's what everyone else is doing. And they just don't take autonomy for the fact that they can run their business. Like Shantae always says this, run your business however you want. Like you get to make that choice. So
I couldn't agree more. And I think that people always think that they have to have the thing first, and then they'll feel another way after. But you have to be that person first and then do and then have. And so I think Shantae said this once. I don't remember how long ago it was, or if I heard it on a podcast or on one of your Maestro meetings. I think you said one time, like, well, is it really hard or are you making it hard? Because I do think people choose.
People love the struggle, man.
I am
Society
guilty of
teaches
this.
people to love it.
Like we make it harder than it needs to be.
Society has taught people that. It said it's not worth it unless it's struggling and hard. And like, meanwhile, the people that are saying that are not struggling.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
oh, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm like, you didn't do that.
You didn't do that. And that's, by the way, if you actually go back to what that saying is actually from, it's actually like, that's a whole other topic of conversation. But, and I think entrepreneurs by nature, most of us do thrive in chaos a little bit. Like we are that personality, certainly. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs create chaos because that's where they feel most comfortable. It's like in PT school, you're the procrastinators. You're the people that do all-nighters the day before the exam, even though you're getting straight A's, because that's how you thrive. And so we have to learn the difference. But let's talk a little bit. So I'll ask you, Lex, I'll shoot this question to you first, because you had both a brick and mortar and a personal brand. So what do you think are the main differences between a brick and mortar identity, business, and a personal brand?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is where you start your marketing, right? So for brick and mortar, I did start with a lot of like Danny Matei's stuff, and it was boots on the ground. You go, you show up locally, you get to know people. When I was owning the clinic was built in an area where I had no people. I had no doctors I knew. I didn't have anyone who I worked with previously, because ideally you build a clinic or open a clinic in a space where you already treated, meaning I was a PT in this area for 5 or 10 years. And I have a practice there now. That is not what it was. So for brick and mortar, it was like meeting people, getting results for 5 people. It was 8 months before I had more than 5 people per week on my schedule. So I won't, inflate it by any means. It didn't take off quickly. I also worked multiple full-time jobs during that time because I needed to make money in order to make the clinic work. So the biggest difference is how you're starting with your marketing. Like we're going word of mouth. We're really relying on getting good results for people so that they tell their friends about you, and then going into local businesses. Now, introducing yourself, maybe giving them, I remember giving, free treatments to different other clinic owners. Like if there was an ortho clinic, come, you can get a treatment. Massage therapist, come see what it's about. When it comes to online business, I learned everything I know from Shantae because I was in her ecosystem at the time that I started. And then she really pushed me, I will say pushed me, but told me what encouraged, highly encouraged me to
Inspired.
get started. So that, that was mostly Instagram. And I will say all Instagram. Another big difference out before I turn over to the Instagram side and all social media for Shantae, but for brick and mortar businesses, one of the best things you can also do is do SEO. Local SEO is very easy if you have a local business because you get to rely on that local factor, and Google loves local businesses. So one of the things that I would have done had the clinic been mine for longer is really dive into SEO. And that's a big difference with online versus brick and mortar. It's not that online can't benefit from SEO. It's just the trajectory and how long it takes is a lot longer. So for brick and mortar, that's another huge difference. Really optimizing your website, optimizing your content for SEO can help tremendously.
For sure. Totally agree. So I guess I would ask Shantae then, what have you found is really important in terms of like the marketing for an online personal brand? I mean, would you say that all personal brands are online brands, or maybe not all personal brands are online brands?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I'd probably throw in the word monetize, because like just being alive, you have a personal brand, but like monetized personal brands, are they online? I mean, probably
Majority.
not.
Oh,
but
no?
like the ones that we know, because if you just think about like the small, like single person business that exists, where it's like, this is just like the guy that I get lessons from, like music lessons from, and you're like, that's Peter.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So they can exist absolutely in person. But obviously my forte and my preference is online. I will say this, I'll start with a similarity though. No matter what you're doing, if you're online or in person, because I worked in person as well, and I did my own thing. I did concierge, and then I rented space because I was like, I am not trying to have this overhead. And when I came to California, I actually had a place set up. They reached out to me and they were like, hey, would you like to work here? And I was like, no, but I'll rent space, and it worked out great. And I funneled them people because I was like, I was still traveling a ton to teach. Yeah, for rock tape. So I would say the commonality with online and in person is to start smart and to start small, right? People, like Lex said it, where she had other jobs. I watch as people try to start, whether it's an online or in-person business, and it has to work because they have no safety net. And I'm like, no, this is when grind culture, hustle culture does make sense, where you like have a million jobs as you're building this thing up so it doesn't have to work. I also totally agree when Lex said with starting in an area where you're already known. Like that's starting smart. Like, yeah, you can just go to some other place and listen to a marketing guru and be like, no matter where you're at, you could sell stuff. And I'm like, that is terrible messaging. It doesn't have to be a struggle. So when I left my practice, and I was in New York City, and like, so this is like back when like they're trying to like enforce these like nonsense non-competes, and I'm like, New York City is like 1 inch big, right? Like you can't like it's literally I go to the other side of town, it's still like 1 inch big, but there was just so much ease because I had been treating, and it wasn't even about I didn't tell a single person where I was going, what I was doing, but people can find you still, right? People found me on LinkedIn. I don't even know what my password is anymore, but I know they found me on there. Right. And then I was able to have people, and I had a few places set up around there in New York City and actually in Brooklyn. But all that to say, start smart, start small. I watch as people, both from the online perspective and in person, they are trying to have this massive thing. And they're like, I'm going to have a team first online. And I'm like, what? That's going to be your biggest line item. Just do it yourself. Start small. So the main difference is how much you niche down. Right. So in addition to all the stuff that Lex said, I'll take it from the online side, is how much you are going to niche or niche down, however fancy you are. If you are in person, you can only niche down, but so far. Like, yes, it is important to niche down, but you can only niche down, but so far, because you're limited by who can come through your door. Right. So you can niche down based on, like we're ortho, we're pelvic floor, and the kind of the vibe we have and the target audience we have. But like, if you're online, you could be the thumb guy. That's it.
Right.
All I treat is thumbs. I'm still waiting to see that because I have yet to see one. I'm still waiting to see the SI joint savior. You want to go make a lot of money, folks? Be the SI joint savior. Everybody got an SI joint problem. Knees over toes guy showed us. Right. I'm actually good friends with him. Like, niche down. There's a lot of knees online. But you can't do that in person because you are just not everybody has that problem. It's not enough people. It's not enough of a market to sustain it. So biggest difference between the two, how much you niche down. You go, as soon as you go online, it's got to be even more niche than you were. Like if you can go tenfold more niche, that would be
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. That's a really great way of saying it too. So I think people are scared of niching down.
Oh
I
yes.
mean, they're very
Yes.
scared of, for sure, in brick and mortar, they're scared of niching down because no, but I'm for everybody. Well, you are. Yes, I get it. I mean, everyone can do Pilates. I get that, but that doesn't mean that we're for everybody. So do you also find that people online in the online
Yes.
space are fearful of niching down as well?
Absolutely, which circles back to my original point of start smart and start small. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you scared of? If you have a job already, you shouldn't be scared, right? Because you're not like, this thing has to work. And I understand you may be in a place where you hate your job. And I'm like, get a different job then. To me, this is one of the reasons I went into physical therapy, because I was like, I will always have a job.
Right.
I'm gonna end up at a hospital, worst case. Oh my God, please don't let me end up there. I'd rather go to Costco, but like, I'll always have a job no matter what. And so it's like, get a job, whether you're doing concierge work or something like that, home health, whatever, that pays the bills. And then in those other hours, you're building this thing up. I understand that if you have kids and things like that, you have even fewer hours. I get it. I'm going to put that out there. But if you start smart and you're like, hey, I have this safety net. This business is paying my bills still. And now I can work to grow this thing concurrently. But yes, it is the number one thing. As a society, again, we're taught scarcity and people are like, there's not enough. And it's just like, I need you to flip it and put yourself in the shoes of the consumer or the customer. When you go somewhere and when you want to pay money to someone, you want to pay the guy. You want to pay the guy,
expert.
the woman who knows that thing. You're not like, I want to pay the generalist. And you're like,
Oh.
I don't know about that one. I think I will go somewhere else. Right?
Yeah.
Same for online. Like you want to become the expert, the person, the go-to person for this. So I always validate the concern and the fears, but it's also like, look at your own your own personal habits, your spending habits. Who are you going to? And also like, let's start smart and have that safety net.
For sure. And I think I always tell my group, like, people will pay experts for general advice, but they don't want to pay generalists for expert advice. And so, from an online perspective, too, if you're the person that helps surfers improve their shoulder mobility, like, those are the people that they're going to be like, oh, I want to work with a guy that actually works with only surfers that helps people with shoulder mobility. So like that's exactly it.
I think that actually answers the question you asked earlier about like personal brands being in person. I think that's how I started. Yeah. It was the guy. It was the town person, the town horseshoer. Like that's a personal brand. Like that became a business. And you're like, yeah, starts
exactly.
there.
So one of the really cool things that I see with SEO as well with that, because I get to work with a lot of brick and mortar business owners who are working on SEO. You can't focus all of your energy on all of the things for SEO. You just can't. So those people who I work with, like they are forced to pick a niche that they have and then write content for that specific person or tailor their website to be for that specific person. So I've worked with a lot of people who are going from the brick and mortar space, having to niche down for SEO because you have to do that. And I feel like those people, if they were to move to go online, they would feel much more comfortable doing so because they've already done it halfway. Right. So they're already choosing the person that they like. Like I will always tell them, who do you want to see at 5 p.m. on Friday when you could be at home enjoying whatever else you like to do outside of work? And they will say, oh, well, that's this person. And I'm like, all right, so you want more of those people? That's what we're going to go after with SEO. And so if that person ever wanted to go online, I do feel like they would have an easier time to, when they hear Shantae say, like, you have to niche down, they would say, all right, like I already know who I like and who I want to work with. And it's just so important to go through that process.
Yeah. And I agree, Shantae, like, and Lex, like when you already have a stable income is easier. I'm not a big like Gary V fan when he's like, don't burn the bridges.
Don't burn those ships,
like,
man.
No,
you sound terrifying.
You're going to drown.
Need money. And it also allows you, I think when you're not dependent on that in your income, like it's not putting food on your table, so to speak, you're more likely, and this might have just been me, but I think you're more likely to take risk and make decisions that, if you're like, well, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's no big deal. I'm learning. Whereas if this was your only income, people are very hesitant to make certain decisions because they're like, if this flops, I'm fucked.
Right. Like you get to say no as well. Right.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to work, if someone contacts you and they are not your ideal client and you don't need that money, it's going to be better for everyone if you just say no and then give them the appropriate the referral. So it's easier to say no when you don't need the money.
I don't really know why people would start a business and then have shitty clients. I'm like, you could just work for somebody else and have bad clients, like,
or
that don't fit.
not getting paid. Like, because like I see this all the time. I'm like, you just left a 40-hour a week, $100,000 job to work 80 hours to make zero.
Make no money.
That's the biggest ass backward decision I've ever.
Why would you do that? Like, the
pay
whole
ourselves
point
first. Pay ourselves
first. The whole point, if you are starting your own business, is why are you starting this thing? Like, you want to be able to see the people who you want to be able to see, treat in the way that you want to be able to treat. I really don't think that people should start their own business right out of school. Like, I'll go back and forth with people on that, but like, I'm like, go learn on somebody else's dime.
Yes.
Like, okay, you can struggle and work uphill, but you could also just go. And yes, I wish the clinics weren't so, super high volume, but there is a lot of value in that. There absolutely is. And if you're getting paid well, 100%. And realizing, like, what's actually important? Do I have to do all 97,000 of these exercises? Probably not. Like, so it's like, go learn these things on someone else's dime and be a really good employee, and also learn if you actually want to run your own business. Because people, we kind of are still within this, but like, a few years ago, it's definitely the like entrepreneurial renaissance of just like, start your own business. And I was like, why? What do you actually want? Because you say, people are like, I want time freedom. And I'm like, that's made up. Time flexibility is real. Time freedom, you still have to do some shit. And if you're starting your own business, then you got to do all the back end stuff and we'll get into all the tech side of things, or you're gonna have to pay someone, but preferably starting off doing all these things. You got to clean the toilets. You got to clean the whole place. You got to market for this thing. You got to go get clients. I think you just want to treat, but you want the autonomy to treat in a certain way. Okay, then let's find a place where you can do that. Like, not everyone is cut out to run their own business. And like, you can find that out and figure that out while working for someone else and getting paid.
So I totally agree with that. I tell people this all the time. I'm like, why do you want to own your own business? It's the same way when I get people that are like, oh, I want to hit 7 figures. I'm like, why?
Why?
Why? Because I can pay myself more. How do you know you're going to be able to pay yourself more at 7 figures? If your goal is to pay yourself more, then that should be your goal. I want to pay myself more. And if getting to 7 figures is the outcome of that, then that's great. Because by the way, I know plenty of 7-figure business owners that are not even profitable, that are underwater and are not paying themselves. And the bigger you get in terms of infrastructure and revenue, the bigger your infrastructure has to get. Like, the more money it costs to run that business. Like, time freedom comes after you do the work. And I think any business owner actually will, anyone that's more than 3 or 5 years into this realizes there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes before you have time freedom. Yes, time flexibility is a much better way to put it.
I was thinking about this today. It's literally, and I don't go in the water. Like, I've lived here since 2016. I don't go in that water. It is too cold. In Miami, I go in.
Yeah, it's hot down here. It's like 80 degrees over here.
It's freezing.
It's lovely.
Year, it's freezing, and it's also cold outside. But I was thinking about this as like an analogy, and it is like surfing. The only way you get to coast is, how did you get out there?
Yeah.
How did that person get out there?
God, that's so good.
Did they paddle through the wave? They went under the waves. Those people be going underneath those waves. They're paddling out. They have to paddle to catch the wave too. And then you get to coast. There's a shit ton of work. So much work. It's actually like very interesting to me watching surfing. I'm like, you do like so much work, and then it's like, and then 10 it's like seconds.
But they say it's a glorious feeling. I'm sure it's a glorious feeling. So I agree. That's a really great analogy. I'm definitely going to clip that part as one of the audio bites, because I think that's such a good analogy for business.
That's what it is.
So let's talk about what I also think scares people the most. And I'll be true. Like, whenever I start a new project, tech is definitely like the biggest barrier to entry. It's easier now. And also, I'm also of the place where I can pay people to help me with the tech. So you're either going to pay with time or money, depending on what you have. But I'm sure that you guys that's like one of the biggest questions from people, right? So Lex, will you talk a little bit about, well, let me ask you this question. What do you recommend if someone's coming to you, they want to start an online portion of their business? Like what tech do they need to have in order to make that happen?
I will say 3 things that you pay for in addition to Instagram, which is free. So I will say you need a website, you
Okay.
need an email marketing platform, and you need a domain email. So info@lexlancaster.com. You need one of those. Those
Yep.
are the 3 things I would say that you need to prepare to pay for right away. And when I say pay, like I think people think that it needs to be $1 million.
Yeah.
Email marketing platforms are like $29 a month ish. A domain email is maybe $70 a year. And if you buy a new domain, your www address, you get a domain email for free for the whole first year. So that's
Yep.
lovely. And then a website is typically $250 a year. So once, I mean, that's also taking into account like you're building your own website, whatever you decide to do. But those are the 3 things that I would say that people really need in order to get started.
Great. Now, what if they have a brick and mortar website? Do you think they should have a separate website or should it be a service link on their brick and mortar site?
That's a great question. So we actually have people who do both in Lecturemind. So we have, like, I'm going to use one of our clients as an example. I won't name her, but she has a really great online presence for her brick and mortar practice. And her ideal client is someone she's already seeing in her brick and mortar practice.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a lot of really great SEO work that she's done for that ideal client already on her brick and mortar site. So for her, it made the most sense to actually just keep it on her brick and mortar practice website page and then just have a separate page for that new service that she's having and offering online. Whereas we have other practitioners who, let's just say they have a multi-clinician practice and then they open up their own online side thing with us, they will have a new website for that online thing because it's different. It's a completely different, business as opposed to their brick and mortar practice. And then, you also have the people who have a completely different model. So we have people in Lecturemind who are going B2C in their brick and mortar, but then we have those same practitioners are going B2B for online business. So they ideally have a different website as well. So it does depend. And that's one of the things that Shantae and I will go back and forth about. And she will talk deeply with them about what are we going to offer? What makes sense? Who do you want to talk to? And that's why it's not a cut and dry process, which we can go through the Lecturemind later, but that's why it's not cut and dry. Like everyone is not learning how to run a webinar. We actually tailor it to that person because depending on who they're going to work with, it's going to be different. So it's the same thing for a website, whether or not you keep it where you already have your brick and mortar practice or make a new one.
Agree. Totally agree. And that's one of the things I like about you guys too, which is similar to the way that I coach women is it should fit you, your lifestyle and your bandwidth at this current point in time. So if you have a woman who happens to have little children, her bandwidth and priorities will be different than mine, say, where now I'm an empty nester. And I'm like, please give me something to do because I miss my kids. So I think it's different. And by the way, we can change our mind and we can grow within that, right? So, when you said that about the people having like a multi-practitioner practice, do you get people that are not the owners of their business and want to start an online adjunct, like an online brand? So say one of my team, say like instructor PTs that work for me, and they want to create their own online brand.
I'm trying to think. I don't think we have had anyone yet.
No, I don't think so.
I don't.
I'd be curious because I would just be curious, like your
it'd be weird
take on how you navigate that. Like maybe if somebody came to you, like how do you think you would navigate that?
Transparency. I mean, it's easy. I can tell you what it'd be like, yo, like what's the situation with your boss? Like, is it an entrepreneur model? That's what I flourished under. RockTape is 100% an entrepreneur model. They realize the more people you bring in, the better it is for them. So it's just like, what's the scenario there? And also, how do you have the bandwidth to be working at this place and doing this other thing? Like, I don't take on like desperate clients. I don't take on clients that are doing too much, as I'm like, no, that's not fun for me. But definitely we don't have anyone. We definitely do not have anyone in Lecturemind.
Yeah. I don't know. It just hit.
They wouldn't be able to afford it also. Like there's nobody that's investing in, that's working for somebody that's like, I am going to invest in a $10,000 program. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like what? Like it's priced out. So maybe the other programs,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Like, maybe like, the Instagram intensive and things like that. Yeah. But like for a high ticket thing, No.
Not so much. You're probably
Yeah,
right.
so-
I mean, that is a big price point to
Yeah.
expand on something, you know. Okay. So now let's talk about like online presence. Because if we're talking about an online brand, a personal brand, you should be online, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are the biggest things you see from people that are like, I have this online brand or I just not getting off the ground? Like, what is it that they're lacking in terms of making that transition from brick and mortar to online?
Sure. I'm writing things down so I don't.
Yeah, I was going to pass that one to Shantae.
Yeah, I want to back up too to the tech question, because this kind of ties in, segues into what's needed. Is like you need tech tenacity.
Yeah.
Mm.
You will not succeed in an online business if you don't have tech tenacity. If your first thing is like, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard, I can't figure it out, you won't succeed. Then every single person I know that has made the transition or like their main thing is online, it's because they have that and they're willing to figure it out and sit with it. And at some point, if you want to outsource it, you can. The best approach is that learn how to do things yourself so that if your person that you outsource it to, like literally the first time I outsourced my editing of my podcast, I had 150 episodes already. I'd done all the stuff myself. The first one that I outsourced, she uploaded Jill's to my podcast.
Oh my gosh.
She's the same editor. And someone was like, it was a good episode, but it was Jill's. And I was
It
like,
was not you.
it was not my podcast. I was like, oh, let me go fix that real quick. Right? The best thing we can do is start off doing these things ourselves, and then we value it. We understand what the amount of work that goes into it, and then you're just way more willing to pay, and your expectations are managed in terms of how long it takes, and you're not going to be like, can you do this thing in 5 seconds? And you're like, oh no, this is like a big task that I'm asking. So a prerequisite, a fundamental prerequisite, in my opinion, to succeeding in the online space is having tech tenacity. The same way if you're a brick and mortar, you have that grit to be like, I'm going to go and pound the pavement, and I'm going to network, and I'm going to clean the office myself. It's the same thing. It's just online. So you have to have that. I will also just piggyback on what Lex said from the tech side. I actually do have everyone get a website to start off with. Right? People will be like, oh, I don't need it. And I'm like, the reason I need you to have a website is so you organize your thoughts.
Yeah.
This doesn't need to be some big robust thing, but I need you to be able to say, who do you help? Who are you? And then this thing will grow. I don't need you to like have a blog written. Like I just need you to be able to like, this is who I am. This is who I help. This is how I help them. And you've put it on one place and you have a little tech tenacity in there and you have the ability to have an opinion on what the colors are and what your font is. Like, let's get all that stuff done. Like move forward with it. So I will always have people, if I'm working with them one-on-one or in group, I will have them build that out very, very, very early on in the process. One of
Do
the
you
cool
think that goes like along with like the sentiment of like action creates clarity? So like
Yeah.
if you're going to be
Yeah.
committed to something, do
Yeah.
this action because now it's kind of like, okay, I actually did it. I'm moving forward.
100%.
I have more clarity.
100%.
That's actually really smart.
I
Yeah.
am that person that hates talk. I'm like,
Okay.
go do it. I hate people in my DMs being like, I'm thinking about doing it. Why are you clogging up my DMs? Go do it. Like, great, I'll clap for you afterwards. But like, action also expresses priority, right? And it's like, you're not doing it. So either you don't want to do it, or to me, it sounds like you don't have the time right now, which is fine. I'm not like judging you as a person, but like, we got to get you doing the things. And like, it's a very tangible step forward. Same thing with posting. But yes, I will have them do a website early on. Agreed with what Lex said 100%. And I would tag on 2 things that should be easy for brick and mortar owners because they're already doing it is you need some sort of calendar, which can be free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you'll need is a payment processor.
Yeah.
Like you don't need that in the very beginning because you ain't got nothing to sell. But like as we move forward, that's what you're going to end up needing. All right. And the beautiful thing with Lectromind is that people already like understand the concept of it because they're already selling stuff and they already have like an online scheduler. And whether it's like, okay, well, we're going to move you away from Jane or, you're going to use Acuity for this. It doesn't really matter what the thing is. You just understand like, I need this thing. And it's like, okay, much. And they're already willing to pay for it because like, yeah, okay, I get the value of this. But for success in the online space, first thing, that tech tenacity, that is like just such an integral thing. Are you willing to figure it out? And it doesn't have to be like the most complex thing, but like, are you willing to go on YouTube? Are you willing to sit with it and be like, oh, it didn't work? Second thing is expectation management. If you go in thinking this is going to be easy, you go in thinking it's going to take 5 seconds, you will stop because it's going to take a long time. And it's not going to be like this, like when I say easy, meaning like I just did one thing and then like I have success. Like that's not how it works in brick and mortar. That's not how it works online.
It's
So
a
having
that's such a fallacy
like
that people have, you know.
like where do you
I
come up
feel
with
like
this?
that it's so helpful too that the people who come into Lecture Mind have built brick and mortar
Yeah, they
practices
know.
because they don't fight us on that. They're like, okay, I
They
get it. It'll
recognize
take
that,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. It makes it
yeah.
really easy.
That should it'll I would say the next thing that you need is niching down. And to me, niching down is something that you learn and you lean into over time. I just want people to start in a direction. And where you end up may not be where you started, and oftentimes it's not. But I just need you to be willing to be like, okay, I'm going to speak to this and I'm going to try it on and see if it fits. And you're like, oh, I don't like it. Right? Because content is just bait. You see who it attracts and you're like, I don't want that fish. Okay, cool. Then we try something else. But you have to be willing to do that, because as long as you're just throwing like this, then you're going to like literally see no traction, because no one knows that you can help them. They're like, oh, who really is this? Is this person for me? Is this thing for me? And then lastly, tying into the expectation management is this time. Like this is a game, especially if we're looking at online, related to social media, right? It's a game of luck largely. And in a game of luck, your best chance at winning is to be always playing and playing for a long time. Right. So it's just like, okay, I've set myself up. I don't need this thing to work. I am going to speak to a specific niche and I'm going to do it a lot of times for a long time. And if it works, amazing. If it doesn't, it's okay, because I got this other thing that I'm doing.
Yeah. And it can fund the growth of that, right?
Yes,
So it can
that's the whole
fund,
goal.
Yeah.
okay, now I can pay for this, or I can pay for ads with this, or I can try new tech. I can, the hardest thing to watch people do is like avoid a $29 a month
Dude,
charge
it's the
because they're
worst.
like,
Dude.
oh my gosh, pay the fucking $29.
$29.
Like, what are we doing?
Like, please, it's $29.
Yes.
Like that's what you get in an order at Chipotle these days. Like, come on,
Like,
it's
what are we doing?
$29.
We
Yeah.
talk about that with Lecture Mind too, because for a brick and mortar practice, you're used to paying rent.
You have rent, you have
Right.
overhead.
You don't have to do that for an online business. Like this is what you have to pay. So it's just much less,
Objectively,
obviously.
a fraction. A fraction
Literally.
of that.
A fraction, such a fraction. And that's the beauty of online is those businesses, I mean, unless you're selling something in person online, but most people they're creating like a platform that is truly scalable. So people talk
Yes.
about scale all the
Yes.
time in the brick and mortar space. And I'm like, that's growth.
Mhm.
Most of our businesses will not scale because we're a time for service model.
Yeah.
And our expenses continue to go up as
Yep.
you grow. Whereas in an online space, your expenses may go up. They may certainly, if you have $1 million operation online, you probably need to have more infrastructure, but your expenses will, like stay the same as your help goes up,
They
right?
go up
And
just a
you
little
can,
bit.
yeah. And one of the things I love about online too is you can change your prices anytime, because whereas like in brick and mortar, you're kind of grandfathered in, like you have to change them for anybody. But especially if online you're running a cohort or a membership, you can be like, okay, starting next month,
next round
prices are going to be XYZ.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
all right. I want to talk to you. I want one more question, then we're going to talk about the Lecture Mind. A lot of things any business, we can control certain things, but we can't control people's buying decisions. We can offer them options. We can offer them choices. We can do that with messaging, etc. We can't control our team. We can't control how our team thinks about us. We can't control all this other thing. So let's talk in the online space specifically, because I know, like you were just saying, only 3 people like the post, but we can't control how many people are going to like the post. So can you just talk about controlling the controllable? So the win, in my opinion, is if in your Lecture Mind, you're like, the goal is to get a website.
Yep.
The win is not how many people go to the website. The win is you got the website up. So that's what you can control. So can you guys talk a little bit about some of the things that are controllable, and that's what people can focus on versus likes, comments, shares, and all of that stuff?
I will say one thing for websites. The biggest controllable that you have is learning how to talk to your ideal client. I have so many people who will ask me whether they can hire someone to do their copywriting, or have me do their copywriting, or use AI to do their copywriting. And I will always tell them, no, please do your first draft of your website copy by yourself, because the only person that should be able to write your website copy, the first round of it anyway, should be you, because you know how to talk to your ideal client, or you should be able to talk to your ideal client. And also, how are you going to be talking to your ideal client about how you can help them? If you can't do that, if you're unable to make those words happen, then in my mind, how are you going to talk to those people anywhere, whether it's brick and mortar or online, right? So I feel like one of the biggest controllables that people have is the way that they talk and learn how to talk to their ideal client. And it's also not always easy. And it comes over time, and you'll have many renditions, which goes back to the lecture mind and how we actually teach people how to do things. Because the way that you speak to someone, or the way that you speak to your ideal client today, you're likely going to adjust that copy down the road, because you're like,
for sure.
actually, like, these people don't say that thing, they say this thing to me. Now I'm going to go edit my website and say that instead. So it's really helpful for clients of mine and in Lecture Mind to write their own website copy, which Shantae will talk all about that for social media and what have you. But that's a big controllable that I feel like everyone has access to, and to not outsource. I just, that to me, it just doesn't feel
the
like
outsourcing can come once you get that all down pat. Like when you get your brand identity down, and I think that happens over time. I mean, it certainly happened to me to figure out who I actually want to be. I mean, I am who I am now, but I didn't start out that way. And I think also PTs specifically is like, our patients aren't searching for like, who can mobilize my SI joint so my PNF motor planning is like correct. No, they're like, my hamstring's always tight on my right side and I don't know what to do about it. So like, you're right. And I think people think like I'm going to put this on there and this is going to live forever. No, you can change it every month if you want. Like when you learn better, you do better. Right. And so I think that's a great controllable for messaging on the website. I think that's a great idea, Lex. And so from Shantae, what's your point in terms of like the social media aspect?
I'll give you an answer to this for anything ever in your whole life. And it's from my good friend Meredith Root, and it's have expectations of effort, not outcome. That's it. Have expectations of your own effort. That's all you can control. Anyone that plays sports knows this. I can't control the other team. I can't control the ref. All I can control is my own attitude, my own effort. It's literally, I can't control the wind. Krista knows. Krista understands beach volleyball. She sent me the volleyball backpack. That wind comes, you can't control it. Worst ever. It's very windy here. It's very windy. And I'm like, this is horrendous. I can't control it. But I can control my own attitude, my own effort. So no matter what it is that we're doing online business, we're doing a launch, we're building a website, we're doing Instagram, all that you can control is your effort. So if you are like, hey, I can post 3 times a week, that's all you focus on. You don't focus on, okay, did 1 million people see it and what happened? It's like, did you post? Especially in the beginning, I just need people to build the habit before they worry about optimizing the habit. I'm like, you're not doing anything.
Literally, it's like you said, like it's just reps. It's like, just get the reps in. It becomes easier. Yeah.
Just get the reps. The one thing I will say with what both of you were talking about in terms of, and I love how you phrased it, of just like the time to like figure out yourself. When people say that they're struggling with what to write and copywriting, yes, written communication is a skill. There's like spoken communication is a skill, and we can get better at it. One thing to realize is that if you're going into this, and this is the value of already having worked with people, right? And you like worked in a clinic and now you're starting your own thing, you've already talked to people. You already know what they say. You're not like, I'd never talked to nobody. Now I have to just guess. Like literally, you've already had these conversations. You have a leg up. What I have seen time and like literally thousands of times at this point is that people, the time that they're taking is not to get better at speaking. It's to be more okay with being seen. They are worried about saying, I treat hamstring pain, because they're like, my peer will think I'm dumb.
Oh my God, that's so true.
I have to say PNF and I got to say PRI. And it's like, your patient is never going to never find you. But we're especially in the digital space, right? Especially in social media space, because what happens with the algorithm, as much as we hate the algorithm, I hate using that word. We hate the algorithm on Instagram because we're just like, show my stuff to my people, but it's also hugely protective, right? Instagram is a nice, for the most part, friendly platform because of how the algorithm works. It shows you things that are like you. It shows you things that do what you do. So most of the time when people start posting on there, they attract a lot of other professionals because they're speaking like that. So the downside of that is that you're like, I'm trying to get patients, but the upside is that that's how the algorithm works. It's hugely like insulating, and it doesn't just like show you to somebody that has like is crazy cuckoo pants. Because of that, people start to see, because they're tracking everything. They're like, oh, who's following me? Who like this? And they see that it's like another PT, and then they're worried about how they're going to be perceived, even though you cannot control how that person perceives you. They are worried about that. And so then they don't say the thing that they know their patient wants because they've already had the conversation 5 million times. I know all of you listening to this are like, I say the same shit every
All the
day.
time.
And then I go home to my kids and I say the same shit to them because nobody listens to anything. I got to say it a million times. So what my experience has been, kind of circling back to the question you asked earlier of like, people that succeed and kind of like what's happening if they're not succeeding. It's those people that are willing to be like, this is it. This is me. This is what I do. This is who I help. I'm going to use their language. And I'm not worried about like, what will, PT Cracky Brigade think?
Totally.
So
That's
it's time to
so
be okay
true.
with that and be comfortable with
Yeah.
that and be confident
Yeah.
in your own voice. And I get
And
it.
it does
Takes
take
time.
time. It takes
Yeah,
time. It takes
100%.
time. It takes time. I get that for sure. It takes time. I also love the oh, but don't I have to have like what if somebody does it wrong on my YouTube? I'm like, there's so much shit on
Oh,
YouTube right now.
yes.
Somebody can go to YouTube right now. You not posting your stuff
What?
is not helping that cause. Like
Yeah.
there's so much crap out there of
I
somebody
just-
showing people how to do deadlifts like
Yeah.
a weird way that you not posting it is not changing that outcome. So if anything, you should post
Yes.
more.
More.
Yes. That's
You
like
actually
what
wanna
I
help?
tell people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
There.
people,
Yeah.
you have everyone comes into their clinic. They have that person who's like, I Googled it before I came in. I know exactly
Yes,
what it
right.
is. And then they spew off something and you're like, who the hell told you that? That's
Then they say
awful
Rotary cup.
information. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
an awful
like-
information. And then I'll tell people, I was like, if you get so upset about that stuff, just go become Dr. Google on your website.
Right.
Go write all of the stuff because then you
Right.
can be the
Totally.
person that comes up.
Yeah, we have to stop. I think PTs specifically, at least I see it, and maybe it's even a little more problematic in brick and mortar because they're always afraid someone's going to come arrest them and put them in jail. But they're like, do we need to have this? I'm like, no, you're worried about the wrong
Yeah,
shit, people.
exactly.
Like,
I'm like,
you're,
if you're worried, put it on and then move forward in any instance. So like from the biggest, like if we really zoom out, I have people that are like, should I go to PT school? And I'm like, if that's the only thing that's going to get you to stop asking me all these questions, yes, then go. Like
Just go do it.
like I'm on the other side of having gone. I can give you my opinion. I'm on the other side of having an OCS, so I can give you my opinion. But like if that question is going to stop you, then go do it. And let's move forward with
Yeah.
things, right? Like
do it.
I just need the action. If you want to put like a disclaimer or whatever, like fine, just put it on there and then let's move forward. One thing that I think that all PTs need to understand, and I can say this like being old, PT's not that serious. Like we think we're doing like some like crazy, they're like, oh, if I do it wrong. And I'm like, then nothing will happen.
By the way, they've been doing it wrong their whole life. That's why they got here. So like, it's not going to make it worse.
This is not open heart surgery where we're like, oh God. It's like, it's okay. Like one of the best things to happen to physical therapy was personal trainers leveling up and doing more. It forced PTs to be like, oh, like, let's like do better. One of the best things that happened to me as a coach and as a PT was seeing people like Ben Patrick as a personal trainer helping all of these people. And being like, you can do this in a leveraged way. It doesn't have to be like, oh, there's only this one specific thing. And if you are like 1 degree out of this, then something's going to happen. He was like, hey, and this is what we do as PTs, right? He was like, start foundationally. Then we'll build onto this. And then we'll build onto this. And I'm going to trust you as an adult to not go and do that other thing. And if you do, well, that's also on you.
Yeah.
That you've done that, right? And understanding the actual impact that we as physical therapists can have. Like this is where it comes back to for me. Like I'm thinking about COVID. And one of the big things that happened during COVID in terms of treating is they were talking about proning patients, right? And just turning them over. Any PT that has had a cardiopulm rotation, which we had a big one at NYU, which was gross, but like, I'm grateful for it. But like also it was gross. So it was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But
I
we
don't
had
want to
it.
do this
I
ever
don't
in
do
my
it
life.
ever. Wound care, cardiopulm, don't want to do it. But we learned this. We know this. We as a profession know so much and can help so many people. But instead, we're worried about how Khaki Brigade is going to look at us and if they're going to ask for a study, and so we don't say anything, and we're trying to like impress them over there. And meanwhile, there are so many people that just have back pain every day, that are suffering every day, and like you can help them, but
Yeah.
you have to have the courage to just put one thing out at a time. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing at a time. That's why you got into this. Majority of the people, right? People don't go into PT to become bazillionaires. And I'm like, if you did, that is a bad choice.
Yeah.
Right? They come in because they want to help
yeah.
people.
Someone advised you incorrectly on that.
Yes.
So.
Incorrect. They lied. They
Yeah.
lied. But
Yeah.
can you do well? Can you do well financially, especially with the online side of things? Yes. And I love what Krista said there of growth versus scaling, because you can actually really scale online and you can leverage things very well online.
Yeah, which is great. So let's get into what Lextramind is. So whoever wants to take this one, you can, because I do recommend when people come to me and are like, oh, I have an online business. I'm like, well, brick and mortar is my thing. I think you should go talk to these people about online. So explain to people what that program is.
Yeah. So the Lecture Mind was essentially developed because I kept having clients come to me wanting to start their online business and have me do the tech side of things, but they didn't really have a business plan, or they didn't know what they wanted to do, or an ideal client, or what are we even making, right? Because one of the biggest values in my business is I don't want you to have to redo things, and I don't want you to pay me for solutions to problems that you don't have. So I would always send them to Shantae, and I'm like, hey, look, I want you to go here first. And then once you solve the problem of like, who am I talking to? What am I creating? What's next? Then come back to me and I'll help you do the tech side. And it happened, frequently enough with brick and mortar practice owners that I went to Shantae and I was like, listen, like, can we make this a thing? And then we started the Lecture Mind, which is it's 9 months of mentorship with us. So you actually get one-on-one calls with both of us. You get group calls monthly. And our goal is to help you go from idea and bring you through your entire first launch with everything coaching wise and strategy wise from us, right? So Shantae will do all of the coaching and then I will help them on their tech side. What they end up walking away with is a whole process that is completely repeatable, and they don't ever have to hire us again because we actually teach them how to do the thing. And it's also very, very personalized. Now, there is not anyone, I don't think at this point, who's on the same exact path and doing the same exact thing. Everyone is doing different stuff. So it's super personalized. And the other big value of it, I will say too, is that it's 9 months for a reason. Because, you can't go from idea to launch and running the whole thing in 3 months. So when Shantae and I were talking about like, what are we going to do? What is this going to look like? What does it have to look like to get people results? We knew that it had to be long because we need to bring them through. Who are you talking to online? Like if as a brick and mortar practice owner, you might not even be posting right now. So
Right.
starting just talking to people and figuring out who you're going to talk to, how you're going to talk to them, and then figuring out, okay, well, now that I talk to these people, what are they asking me? What makes sense to offer them? Now we're going to create a product, and then we're going to actually launch that product, have the time to develop interest for that thing. And then once we launch it, what do we do after that? And then what does our second launch look like? It just has to be a long process. And, we couldn't cram that into 3 months because they're not going to get the results. And our promise is to make sure that they do. Like our promise is that their first launch won't flop. Like that is what we want to offer to them. So I'll turn over to Shantae to add all of anything she wants to add, but that's our gist.
Yeah, that is, I think that the one thing that I'll add to that is understanding what's meant and desired by online business, this is not something that we like accept someone and then we're like, now what did you mean by that? Like we're doing this with the application process because it's like, do you want to try to offer an online something to your current in-person people, which really doesn't work that well? Or are you trying to attract people online for this service, or are you trying to teach other clinicians? What are you trying to do? And then from there, that'll dictate one, whether or not we accept them, but also what we do with them. One of the things that Lex had said in there is like, are you posting? Like if someone's not posting, we're not accepting them. Like what the heck am I going to do with you? You got no audience. Like I'm not taking your money. So we actually had someone apply this round, even though I told her, I was like, do not apply. But nobody listens to anything. And she applied and I was like, ma'am, You need to go post. And she actually DM'd me the other day and she was like, so like what you said is working. And now she had like 500 followers at the time and she has over 5,000. And I was like, great. I
Amazing.
know she's that is a rare case, folks. Like people don't grow that fast. I
Yeah.
want you to know that. But like that is the action items that you will hear from us of like, you need to have an audience of some size going into this. And then we will have the discussion as well with people to manage expectations of like, if you have no audience or a very small audience, here's the expectation management around what's going to happen during lecture mind and your things that you walk away with is literally going to be more of the infrastructure and understanding how to run this launch, but you're probably not going to have a massively like you may get 3 people that come to this thing. You may get 5 people. That's still not a flop because we know we went in anticipating that number. It's not gonna be 0 people. Whereas if we had someone last year come in and I knew she would have I was like, I would be surprised if you did not have a 5-figure launch. Like this, just from what I know, the math I know, what you've been doing, how you've been showing up, the audience size you have, it will be like this. And then we had someone else who actually ended up going viral during our time at Lecture Mind. And so obviously you have more eyes. She was super niched down and like her actual numbers in terms of what she did during her launches got bigger. But in terms of the program itself and in terms of like any of you listening to this and like you're going to go work with somebody, like these are the things that I want you to be asking and going and thinking. And like if the person is like, yeah, I'm going to help you make an online business and you're going to have all this money, make all this money. And I'm like, do you have an audience? Who's buying this? And who are you selling it to? Trying to take your in-person people and move them online is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly difficult. Imagine
they're two different consumers. Like if anyone learned anything in COVID, it was like your online people and your in-person people are 2 different avatars. They don't overlap. They don't have the same messaging. So yeah, you're right.
What they want is different. So if you're like, oh, but I have like this really long wait list and I just want to put them into an online thing. And I'm like, do they want that? Have they said, if you have people and you've made it an interest list and they're like, I will buy this. I am busy. Like this would be great. That's one thing. But if you're just like, I just want to give them this other thing that they said they don't want. And I'm like, I'm not helping you do that.
Doesn't work. No.
That's a bad idea. That's a very, very bad idea. So you folks listening to this, if you're thinking about moving to the online space, it's why are you moving to the online space? Who are you trying to work with in the online space? What are you trying to do with them? Are you trying to go and, do business coaching? That's very different. Are you trying to attract people? If you're trying to attract people for your brick and mortar, do SEO. Don't go on Instagram. Yes. You literally need 0 Instagram. As a matter of fact, do not go on Instagram. Like, throw your phone away. I need you to work on SEO. If you're trying to have remote clients and have this bigger presence and be super niched down, okay, then we can talk social media. But they are very, very different. And these are things that we ask the people that are coming in to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for whatever it is that we're going to be working on with them.
Yes. For sure. It's kind of like, I mean, if I equate business stuff to movement all the time because I think that's what PTs and health and fitness people understand. So I'm like, we all have clients that come in who might be in excruciating pain, but I'm like, I see a few things that optimize, you're going to be out of pain and no problem. Like I see that your hip joint is not moving at all. Like I know with a few mobs and a few exercises, your pain's going to be gone. So same in the business and online space. Like I can look at businesses that they're doing great and I can see the problems. I'm like, listen, we clean this up, you're going to be golden. But then there's other businesses or there's other people that come in and evals and you're like, yeah, dude, I don't like it's a hot mess right now. Like, I'm not sure this is going to take longer. Express. You're going to need a lot of work kind of thing. Yeah. Yep. So I get that. Do you guys have an opinion or stats in terms of success, like B2B versus B2C?
It's easier
in terms
B2B.
of online.
Yeah.
Like
definitely easier.
B2B. It's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier for a few reasons, right? And you can go B2B without going B2B as a business coach. Right. If you are a pelvic floor physical therapist teaching other pelvic floor physical therapists about pelvic floor physical therapy, that is still B2B and that will do well, right? Because pelvic floor physical therapists are learners and you're also helping them make money. So it's realistically, are you helping people make more money or are you helping them like get out of pain, solve their own problem, right? Very different things. It is much easier across the board to help people make more money. That's why the richest people in the United States are hedge fund folks that help people make more money, right? Like we understand this. Whereas it's not people that are like, I'm going to get you out of pain. People are like, I have to work for that.
Yeah.
Sign me up
Totally.
next year. I don't really
Yeah.
want that. So I don't have numbers for this, but it will always be easier if you are going B
B2B.
to B, or if you're teaching learners or you're teaching people how
Mhm.
to make money.
Yep.
100%. If you're trying to be like, I want to help people solve their problems, it will be more difficult. It will be slower. And you should still do it. You just have to have, like I said earlier, expectation management
I love
around
that.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I just was curious as
Yeah.
to like what you thought. I think
Oh, yes.
B2C, you have you have more people, right? There's obviously
Yes.
more consumers than
Yes.
businesses, but you really have to get good with your messaging because you really got to hone in onto like the specific people that are going to pay $1,500 for a coaching, like a
This.
personal training program, right? So
It
versus
is
B2B,
way
people are
harder.
like, I need help with tech. I need help with this. I need help with this.
Yes.
I need,
Yeah.
And
yes.
I'll
So
make
I
more
agree.
money if I
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Right? Like getting out
So
of pain is like, it is a motivator, but
not always.
not always. It has to be like
Yeah.
super acute. It's like not always. But like,
Especially
yes.
like you said, if it requires them to do work,
And they're
like
like,
not
I'm good.
always. They're
Can I
like,
take a
I want
pill?
a pill or a
Yep.
shot.
I have to
How
work. I
fast
don't.
can we make
I'm,
this happen?
I'm
Yeah,
good.
exactly. I'm going to do this first.
I'm
So
good.
where can people find information on that then?
So the lecture mind, we'll give you a link so you
Awesome.
can share, but it is all hosted right on my website. And then Shantae also has a link in her Instagram bio and my Instagram bio, so you can find it there. We have all of the information on the page. So from price point to what
All the
you
stuff.
get, all the
Everything's there.
FAQs, everything is there. So feel free to take a look at that. We open enrollment, so we'll take applications in November. Well, no, late October because it will start in November.
Great.
And then we go through July.
That's awesome. So people can look at it, get it. Do you have an interest list up?
We do
now? Okay.
Yep, they
awesome.
can join that right now, and then we'll communicate with them shortly before we open the doors, and then when it's time, they can apply.
Awesome. I know that Lex also has her SEO school. So on your website, right?
Yes.
LexLancaster.com.
Yep.
And then Maestro still does Instagram intensives. Correct.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
those
I haven't done
are
one yet this year. We'll see if I pull one out.
maybe pull one
We'll
out of the
see.
rafters. I
We'll
mean, how many
see.
are you on now? How many cohorts are you on?
This will be 17. So I'm kind of
Amazing.
like, do I want to
I
run it
know. I hear you.
again? And
hear you.
also like meta's worse. And I'm like, do I want to do this? So
It's hard. It is.
That's
But
what
you
I'm
should
like.
definitely follow both of them on Instagram. We'll link their handles in the show notes. Lex is always giving like really cool, easy tips on emails and tech and SEO. And the Maestro musings are always on point, I would say. And you always do some really good, just about how being authentic and just showing up and just doing the thing. And then we get to see the cats and the dogs. And so like, that's also cute too. And so
all around wins.
I know. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope to maybe be out in California sometime. We can see each other IRL, as they say.
Yeah.
Thank you again. And until next time, everyone, bye for now.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.